So the truth is coming out. More and more people are waking up, and it's getting harder and harder to promote the official narrative. So I saw a very nice post today. It was set to private, so I'm not going to say the name of the woman who posted it, and I don't have her permission to say her name, but I'll read out the post. Quote, "I'm confused. I did my own sleuthing and have discovered that there has been more deaths thus far in children from flu than COVID," meaning this year. Now, I'm not talking about the older population or the immunocompromised. I'm solely talking about children because we're about to enter summer, where the camp will proceed is still up in the air, and if it does go forward, the CDC guidelines are so insanely strict that it seems impossible to do it. In addition, even fall school openings is not a given. So I ask, if the flu has thus far killed way more kids number-wise, then why are we not more terrified of the flu? Why has there never been guidelines to avoid getting the flu? Yes, I know there's a flu vaccine, flu shot, but we know not everyone takes it, and we know many who have had the flu as a result of getting the vaccine. And it's not just the flu that kills. It seems car accidents killed even more kids than the flu. So, car accidents kill more kids than the flu, and the flu kills more kids than COVID, allegedly. Why are we allowing kids in cars? Why are we allowing kids in cars? If we make restrictions for COVID, then we should certainly make restrictions for the flu, because more kids die from the flu. If we make restrictions on kids for the flu, if we don't even make restrictions for the flu, at least we should for cars. Why are we allowing kids in cars? Even more kids die from being in cars. Continuing, of course I am asking these questions knowing the answer. We can't live our lives fearing cars or the flu, right? We have to take calculated risks. That's just part of living our lives. Though these things can kill, it is rare enough that we can live our lives carefully protecting ourselves. We wear seatbelts. We get the flu shot. Some of us don't get the flu shot. The flu shot is poison, toxic. In any case, we stay away from sick people if they show signs of the flu. We wash our hands. And I don't know about you, but I've never sat on a public toilet without piles of toilet paper as a barrier. Nor have I ever touched a toilet seat handle. Before COVID, we lived our lives trying not to get sick. Why are we now shutting down camps and schools for a virus less deadly to our kids under 18 than the flu? Why are we leaving them to roam free and in turn spend more time in cars and bikes? Far more risky than COVID, right? In camps, they'll be taken care of. Without camp, they will be lacking supervision. And if you say the adult staff are in danger, then why can't the staff be under 45 years old for the summer? It seems that the risk for that age is still lower than death by the flu for that age range. If there's a 65-year-old teacher who still wants to teach, why can't she or he be on Zoom while our kids go to school? Why should our kids, the ones least susceptible to issues from COVID, be stuck at home? If your answer is they will bring it home to the parents, then why do you think they can't catch it hanging with friends, which is what they'll do if they don't go to camp? I mean, let's be real. Unless you plan on locking them up in a room, which is child abuse, your kids will end up interacting with other kids, as they should. If you are a parent under age 50, are you so afraid of catching it, even though your chance of dying is thankfully also low, that you are willing to keep your kids out of school and watch them regress? I venture to say most parents want schools and camps to open back up. In fact, sleepaway camp has the potential to be the safest environment for this summer for kids. It's a self-contained bubble where kids will go in, testing negative. Yeah, well, no one should take the faulty COVID test in any case, but let's say the test negative. So as long as they're in this protected environment, if anything, they'll be safer. They'll be monitored far more carefully than if they stay home with no plans. So they can't become carriers if they're in this relatively protected environment of the camp. And so I ask, why is no one hiding from the flu? Answer, perhaps it's because CNN isn't telling you to. And quote, and she quotes, she posts here statistics from this year. CDC issues final flu report. 166 children died during 2019 to 20 season. Flu figures show 125 child deaths, record high hospitalizations in young children. Right, so that is higher than the rate of death of young children from COVID. So the question about the flu and the question about cars, these are just so obvious. And it's precisely because they're so obvious that people don't realize that these questions need to be asked. Because when you hear supposedly highly intelligent, highly educated, highly respected, authoritative personalities, figures saying something, it doesn't occur to you that there's something really obvious wrong with what they're saying, that they're totally off, so totally off that they're not appreciating the basic fact that life involves risk, functioning in the world involves risk, and that if the risk is extremely low, we take that calculated risk, and that there never was any proof that, at least, let's talk about kids, right? There never was any proof that COVID is dangerous for kids. Well, if it's not dangerous for kids, then we should not restrict kids. And all those who think that since the CDC is saying that these are their guidelines for schools, because it has to be a phased reopening. It's not enough that we had the lockdown, but we have to do it slowly, just to make sure we're on the right track. That has to include changing the framework for kids. The kids need to be treated equal to the adults. The obvious point is that it hasn't affected kids. So what's the logic? There is no logic. But the true answer is that this is what we've come to blindly accept the authority figures, so we're not using our logic. We're parroting, we're repeating, not me, and not, I'm sure, many of the viewers of this presentation, but the people. That's what I mean by that, by the we expression. The people have come to accept this narrative, and therefore anything that they're told is viewed as legitimate, is viewed as, a necessary measure to overcome the scourge. It's all about the appeal to authority, the argument from authority. We're being told by authority figures, officialdom. It's all about control of officialdom. People who are submitting blindly to those who come in the name of science. They just need to say something sciencey. You need to show a graph and use some really intelligent sounding expression, a slogan. We're going to flatten the curve. You look at that graph. You see how it goes, and there's that one like that. And you understand? You saw a graph, yeah. And here's statistics like that if you don't listen to us, and like that if you do listen to us. So listen to what we say. That's all purely emotional. You understand? It's an emotional argument. It's an appeal to authority. Accept me because I have a degree, because I have a position. Meaning to say, don't doubt my authenticity. Don't ask, perhaps I have a conflict of interest. Don't ask questions like, isn't your organization getting money from Bill Gates? For example, Neil Ferguson's the Imperial College of London got a big donation from Bill Gates. Well, don't you therefore have a conflict of interest in the conclusions that you come to? And if you want us to believe you just because you said so, well, maybe we should investigate your possible conflicts of interest first before we blindly accept you because you say you're an authority and you speak in the name of authority. And the same with government. The claim that there is danger that warrants harsh measures involves a conflict of interest because the government has an interest in imposing harsh measures, because the government has an interest in expanding its power. The government wants to find any excuse to expand its power, and it will stop at nothing for that sake, and it will lie to you, and it will even tell you a big lie for that sake. The propaganda we've been sold is that the government means for the best interest of the citizens. That is false. That is certainly suspect. Maybe some politicians do. Not all politicians are completely corrupt. But those are the exceptions to the rule. The government is in the business of control, of expanding its power. Show me a government that has voluntarily weakened its power over the course of time. Maybe slightly here and there because of very strong pressures. But on the whole, what you can observe is a steady expansion of government power as time goes by everywhere. And this is especially alarming with regard to the intelligence agencies, the unchecked power that they have. They can act without supervision. They can act independently. Politicians are not aware of what they're up to. The politicians are themselves controlled by these intelligence agencies. People naively think it's the other way around, that the politicians are providing a check and balance against the expansion of the intelligence agencies. It's the exact opposite. The intelligence agencies are dictating the agenda, and they're able to hide their covert operations under the guise of national security, and it's classified as top secret. There's no need to know. The politicians don't have a need to know. All these terms, which, I mean, they're legitimate in some contexts, I'm sure, but they're very subject to abuse by their very nature. And we are clearly viewing a massive, unprecedented, covert operation, the likes of which has not been seen since 9/11. We are seeing all the governments of the world cooperate, pushing the same agenda at roughly the same time, coming out at the same time with lockdowns, and then coming out with propaganda about masks, then coming out with propaganda about contact tracing, and then coming out with the agenda of a phased reopening. And of course, they all came out at the same time about social distancing. They all said the same thing. In fact, in many cases, the leaders literally said the same thing in the same order. They were reading from a script. This has all been scripted. We are victims of a massive, you could call it a false flag operation, a hoax, a massive intelligence operation to take over society, to change society. These changes for children, they're not logical, but they make sense if your goal is to reprogram children's minds. If your goal is to make them obedient followers of the state on a whole new level. If your goal is to traumatize them so that they submit, then it makes sense. That's the goal. These measures are here to stay, at least as far as the elites are concerned. Social distancing in schools, masks in schools, all kinds of harsh impositions on the children. They are going to be mandatory, and all they need is a flimsy excuse. Well, if the kid catches it, the kid could give it to the parents, and then the parents could die. Even if they're young parents, well, then they could give it to grandparents, and grandparents could die. Never mind, the grandparents are in complete isolation, house arrest, essentially. It could spread. Because it could spread, and somebody could die at the end. Therefore, we're going to force your kids to live in this environment that's completely toxic, that really constitutes child abuse. But it's all legitimate, because if we don't do it, somebody might die. So if you don't agree with us and you don't care about that killing grandma, so this post that I read out, it's just so, it sums up the matter so clearly. It is completely illogical. So we have to approach the people who are deceived, who might listen to us, and try to point out the inconsistency, the lack of logic of all these measures. Try to point out that the government has been deceiving us. The government is inflating the statistics. Why would they inflate statistics for a real plague pandemic? If it was real, then there'd be tons of people dying from it. There would be no need to classify it in a deceptive way. If someone died with COVID, you classify them as if they died from COVID, or you equate them in the death toll with those who died from COVID and so on and so forth. There is no test for COVID, which means that all the statistics for COVID are completely meaningless and completely false. These are all obvious flaws in the official story that we have to persistently point out, call people's attention to. And on this note, I will read out a very important story. Many years ago, there lived an emperor who loved beautiful new clothes so much that he spent all his money on being finely dressed. His only interest was in going to the theater or in riding about in his carriage where he could show off his new clothes. He had a different costume for every hour of the day. Indeed, it was said of other kings that they were at court. It could only be said of him that he was in his dressing room. One day, two swindlers came to the emperor's city. They said that they were weavers, claiming that they knew how to make the finest cloth imaginable. Not only were the colors and the patterns extraordinarily beautiful, but in addition, this material had the amazing property that it was to be invisible to anyone who was incompetent or stupid. It would be wonderful to have clothes made from that cloth, thought the emperor. Then I would know which of my men are unfit for their positions, and I'd also be able to tell clever people from stupid ones. So he immediately gave the two swindlers a great sum of money to weave their cloth for him. They set up their looms and pretended to go to work, although there was nothing at all on the looms. They asked for the finest silk and the purest gold, all of which they hid away, continuing to work on the empty looms often late into the night. I would really like to know how they are coming with the cloth, thought the emperor, but he was a bit uneasy when he recalled that anyone who was unfit for his position or stupid would not be able to see the material. Of course, he himself had nothing to fear, but still, he decided to summon someone else to see how the work was progressing. I'll send my honest old minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He is the best one to see how the material is coming. He is very sensible, and no one is more worthy of his position than he. So the good old minister went into the hall where the two swindlers sat, working at their empty looms. Goodness, thought the old minister, opening his eyes wide. I cannot see a thing. But he did not say so. The two swindlers invited him to step closer, asking him if it wasn't a beautiful design and if the colors weren't magnificent. They pointed to the empty loom, and the poor old minister opened his eyes wider and wider. He still could see nothing, for nothing was there. Gracious, he thought. Is it possible that I am stupid? I never thought so. Am I unfit for my position? No one must know this. No, it will never do for me to say that I was unable to see the material. You aren't saying anything, said one of the weavers. Oh, it is magnificent! The very best, said the old minister, peering through his glasses. This pattern and these colours. Yes, I'll tell the emperor that I am very satisfied with it. That makes us happy, said the two weavers. They called the colours and the unusual patterns by name. The old minister listened closely so that he would be able to say the same things when he reported back to the emperor, and that is exactly what he did. The swindlers now asked for more money, more silk, and more gold, all of which they hid away. They then continued to weave away, as before, on the empty looms. The emperor sent other officials as well to observe the weavers' progress. They too were startled when they saw nothing, and they too reported back to him how wonderful the material was, advising him to have it made into clothes that he could wear in a grand procession. The entire city was alive in praise of the cloth. Magnificent, excellent, they said. The emperor awarded the swindlers with medals of honor, bestowing on each of them the title Lord Weaver. The swindlers stayed up the entire night before the procession was to take place, burning more than 16 candles. Everyone could see that they were in a great rush to finish the emperor's new clothes. They pretended to take the material from the looms. They cut in the air with large scissors. They sewed with needles, but without any thread. Finally, they announced, "Behold, the clothes are finished!" The emperor came to them with his most distinguished cavaliers. The two swindlers raised their arms as though they were holding something and said, "Just look at these trousers. Here is a jacket. This is the cloak, and so forth." They're as light as spiderwebs. You might think that you didn't have a thing on, but that is the good thing about them. Yes, said the cavaliers, but they couldn't see a thing, for nothing was there. Would his imperial majesty, if it please his grace, kindly remove his clothes, said the swindlers. Then we will fit you with the new ones here in front of the large mirror. The emperor took off all his clothes, and the swindlers pretended to dress him piece by piece with the new ones that were to be fitted. They took hold of his waist and pretended to tie something about him. It was the train. Then the emperor turned and looked into the mirror. Goodness, they suit you well. What a wonderful fit, they all said. What a pattern. What colors. Such luxurious clothes. The canopy to be carried above your majesty awaits outside, said the Grand Master of Ceremonies. Yes, I'm ready, said the emperor. Don't they fit well? He turned once again toward the mirror because it had to appear as though he were admiring himself in all his glory. The chamberlains who were to carry the train held their hands just above the floor as if they were picking up the train. As they walked, they pretended to hold the train high, for they could not let anyone notice that they could see nothing. The emperor walked beneath the beautiful canopy in the procession, and all the people in the street and in their windows said, Goodness! The emperor's new clothes are incomparable! What a beautiful train on his jacket! What a perfect fit! No one wanted it to be noticed that he could see nothing, for then it would be said that he was unfit for his position or that he was stupid. None of the emperor's clothes had ever before received such praise. Piped up a small child and said, But he doesn't have anything on! Good Lord, let us hear the voice of an innocent child, said the father, and whispered to another what the child had said. A small child said that he doesn't have anything on. Finally, everyone was saying, He doesn't have anything on. The emperor shuddered, for he knew that they were right, but he thought, the procession must go on. He carried himself even more proudly, and the chamberlains walked along behind carrying the train that was not there. Source: Hans Christian Andersen. There we have it. So, there's no reality to the pandemic narrative. There are not masses of people dying all over the world. And maybe in one or two places, several places they're dying. But that begs the question of why they're dying there. But in other places, there's nothing going on. There's nothing going on in California, nothing going on here in Texas, nothing going on in Australia, and nothing going on in Israel. There are something going on in New York. Yes. What is going on is major malpractice in the hospitals, which we understand predated COVID. And perhaps it's related to the adverse effects of the flu shot. Perhaps it's related to 5G. Whatever it may be. The point is, you can talk about New York, but that's a separate topic. That's a topic that is localized to the city of New York. New York is irrelevant to other places. I don't live in New York. I live here in Texas, in Houston. And there is no pandemic here in Houston. Anyone who says there is a pandemic in Houston is either stupid or he's a liar. Anyone who says there's a pandemic in Australia is stupid or is a liar. Anyone who says there's a pandemic in the state of Israel is stupid or he's a liar. I'm sorry. He's one of the two. Because there aren't people dropping dead all over the place in any of these places. It's just not happening. And those lay leaders and rabbis who pretend that there is a pandemic, an epidemic, there is this disease running rampant, raging, in the places where they live when nobody is dying. Yes, people are dying. People die all the time. Someone told me, I said to him, there's no pandemic here in Houston. It just doesn't exist. He said, he went to a funeral last week of one person who died from COVID. I said, really? One person died? You've proved my point. One person. And how old was that person? Yeah, it was an old woman, whatever, in her 70s. Right. So a woman in her 70s died. Only one person that you can tell me about that you even know about. And you're telling me that this is proof that we're living through a pandemic here, not in another location 4 hours by plane away, okay? Here, right here? You're telling me there's a pandemic here? You're lying. You're spreading lies. When you tell me, you rabbi or lay leader or whoever you are, claim that there is a pandemic here. There is no pandemic here. It's not true. Don't pretend it's true. Don't tell people they have to wear masks because there's great danger if they don't wear a mask, because there's this bug going around that is causing people to die all over the place. No, it's not true. I spoke to the director of the funeral home, and I asked her a simple question. Have there been more people dying over the past 2 months than in general? Do you notice a rise in the death rate? From what you can observe. She answered just the facts. She said, there is no difference at all. She says she hasn't noticed any difference. Nothing. There are people die. Yeah, people die regularly, on a regular basis. That's the way of the world. Just like people are born on a regular basis. But to say that there's a massive increase, there is no massive increase. So there's no pandemic here. Now, if you want to say that because of the measures prevented the spread of the disease, so therefore there's no pandemic, you can claim that. You can say, I mean, that's a theory. I don't agree with it. But there's still no pandemic here. So don't claim that there is. Those people who promote a lie that there is a pandemic here, we need some little kid, some person who doesn't know, he's not educated, he didn't go to college, he didn't go to Lahavdil, to yeshiva. Anybody can come along and say, there is no pandemic here. You don't need to be a scholar, you don't need to be an intellectual, you don't need to be a professional. Anybody can come and say, there is no pandemic here, there is no need for any measures. There is no need for masks, there's no need for phased reopening, there's no need for anything. We are being lied to, not just by the government, but by people who are supposed to be our leaders, who know that it's not true and are playing along with the lie, or they're deceived by the lie. Either way, perhaps they're like the king who thinks that the clothes are real. Perhaps that's what they're like. But we've got to say, no, the emperor has no clothes. The clothes are not real. It's not real. There is no pandemic. And if you keep repeating that, then finally the people in charge will have no choice but to admit that the lie cannot be denied anymore. We don't shut down the world for the flu. Cars cause even greater death. We don't shut down the world because of car accidents. We should not shut down the world because of COVID. We should not impose any measures different from the usual because of COVID. God bless. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.